Hey guys, Mike at the Pop Culture Playhouse, and welcome back to another installment of the Blu-ray DVD Weekly Wrap-Up. We have another great stack of diverse titles to check out this week, including Lars von Trier's latest opus, Nymphomaniac Volume I and Volume II, the slasher musical hybrid Stage Fright from Magnet Releasing, the Fair is Fair Blu-ray edition of The Legend of Billie Jean, Joel Schumacher's Flatliners starring Kiefer Sutherland, Julia Roberts, and Kevin Bacon, and more. So sit tight, and we'll be back in just a flash. Alrighty guys, and welcome back to this week's installment of the Blu-ray DVD Weekly Wrap-Up. The first title that we're going to take a look at is available July 22nd from Mill Creek Entertainment. It's the 1990 Joel Schumacher thriller, Flatliners. Now, I may be in the minority, but the majority of Joel Schumacher's work I've actually really enjoyed. Now, his Batman sequels were definitely something that were not some of my favorite films, but I feel like that's something that the majority of people genuinely agree with. That said, I was a big fan of the highly underrated 8mm starring Nicolas Cage. I think that Michael Douglas's turn at Falling Down is really fabulous, and I think A Time to Kill is one of the finest legal dramas to emerge from the 1990s. In addition, his efforts in the 80s, such as St. Elmo's Fire, and of course The Lost Boys being one of my favorite vampire films of all time, really makes Joel Schumacher's output generally, favored, at least by my opinion. But Flatliners is one of the few films in his catalog that's just evaded me for years, but luckily Mill Creek Entertainment is reissuing it out on Blu-ray once again. For those of you that have never heard of Flatliners, it centers on a group of medical students who embark on this really dangerous and arrogant experiment that has them putting themselves under anesthesia and basically touching death, flatlining completely, and hopefully being able to get revived and come back to report what they find on the other side. Once they emerge back from this very, very risky experiment, they're haunted by all this bizarre and nightmarish imagery that's really intruding now on their daily lives. By that premise alone, and the cast in this that's headlined by Kiefer Sutherland, Julia Roberts, Kevin Bacon, Oliver Platt, and William Baldwin, I thought there was going to be a lot to enjoy in this one because it sounded really unique, it sounded very fresh, at least, fresh to me. I've never really heard of a premise quite like this, so I was really intrigued and hopeful going into Flatliners. Unfortunately, it was a pretty underwhelming experience, to say the least, and I think that the major issue with it is, or at least one of the major issues with it, is the chemistry amongst this great cast. They're basically as cold as a corpse in a morgue. I mean, there's just really no great chemistry gelling between the performers. Although all of them are really great, they're all fine actors, but none of them really gel and have a great, chemistry and friction amongst them to really make it, a really absorbing experience for the viewer. Kiefer Sutherland is probably the highlight of it, as he has, much more of an emotional, turnover in this one than his co-star. So he definitely was the actor that really stood out the most in this one. But overall, everybody just feels very flat, no pun intended. So, that in that respect, the performances was pretty underwhelming. In addition, with them going under this tricky experiment, after the first and second person that goes under doing it, and then you kind of see them following the pattern, it gets very redundant very quickly. We all kind of know what's going to happen. They go under, they're all very cautious and scared that they might not come back, and then they come back with this these nightmarish, weird imagery that, as the viewer, you're not really understanding what this is because, again, another flaw with the film is that there isn't much of a foundation with these characters. You're not really latching onto them, and while they're not necessarily bad people, although they're kind of playing this godlike complex with this experiment, you don't really learn too much about them that makes you feel for them one way or the other. So, a big chunk of the runtime kind of is wasted kind of going through the experiment time and time again, just with a different person testing it out, with varying results each time. But like I said, it gets really tired and very redundant for the viewer. It isn't really until a little over an hour into it where, it's all kind of come out in the open, and they all admit to themselves that they're all having this really bizarre, nightmarish imagery happening in their daily lives, which Doi would probably have been the first thing to admit to this core group of friends of yours, but they don't admit it to each other very late in the game, and it isn't until then that they really start to investigate and kind of go back into their past, where, each of them individually suffered a lot of childhood trauma in their own unique ways, so they try and rectify that now as adults to kind of get rid of these bizarre things going on now in their heads. And it kind of just comes a little too late, while the bizarre imagery can get you for a jump scare every now and again, it just comes off as weird, and you're kind of scratching your head as to how it all makes sense. Of course it does, but it's a little too late by that point for you to really care enough to get fully absorbed in it, because by that point the movie's nearly over, so it's a shame because, like I said, the plot of Flatliners sounded really unique and very interesting, but overall the delivery and, the chemistry amongst the cast members was really underwhelming, kind of making this a kind of mediocre, below average viewing experience. But that said, I really enjoy Joel Schumacher's work, but unfortunately, Flatliners is definitely going to have to be lumped into the section of films of his that I don't really care too much for. But for those of you that are interested in the cast and Joel Schumacher's work, and a unique premise like this, because it really is, it's a really cool story that, frankly, in this day and age where we're constantly rebooting and remaking things, I could definitely see something like Flatliners getting a second life on television, or maybe a full-fledged, movie remake, because it is a really cool story and concept in theory. Just the delivery that you find in this film isn't really anything to write home about. But that said, for those of you that are curious, it will be available July 22nd from Mill Creek Entertainment. Alrighty guys, and next up, available July 22nd from Mill Creek Entertainment, is the Fair is Fair edition of The Legend of Billie Jean. Now, this is a film that I've always wanted to see for years, and it always evaded a legitimate DVD or Blu-ray release up until the last few years ago, where Warner Archives put it out as a part of their manufactured on-demand program. And interestingly enough, that DVD looked really hot, was very bright, very crisp, really full of life. And then Mill Creek Entertainment got the rights of the film and just put it out not too long ago on like a 6-movie DVD compilation, but now they're finally giving it the proper treatment it so rightfully deserves by giving it a special Fair is Fair Blu-ray edition, all by itself at a very, very discounted price. But for those of you that have never seen The Legend of Billie Jean, it came out back in 1985, and it stars Helen Slater with her brother, Christian Slater, in his film debut. No, they're not actually real-life brother and sister, they just happen to, oddly enough, share the same last name. But they play brother and sister in this film, and they're these Texas teenagers living in a trailer park, and Christian Slater's character is really obsessed with his moped scooter, and it isn't until these local bullies kind of mess with him and rough him up and do some serious damage, $608 worth of damage to be exact, to his scooter, that Billie Jean and her friends go down to the kid's father's store to kind of discuss the matter and give them the bill for the damages that they owe. When the bully's father invites Billie Jean upstairs to give her the money, he tries to push himself on her, and then one thing leads to another, and Christian Slater's character accidentally shoots him, and before you know it, Billie Jean, her brother, and some of Billie Jean's friends are outlaws, teenage outlaws on the run, and the cops, everybody is looking for them, but all in this process, teenagers across the country kind of see Billie Jean as a hero of theirs, and, this fighter for freedom, so she kind of gets all this fame, and she becomes, really notorious amongst teenagers for doing the right thing and whatnot, so it is a really, really cool teen angst film. I love films like this from the 80s. Another one that I really admire that not enough people talk about is Running Hot, starring Eric Stoltz, and it's just films of this nature that I felt always seemed like they were a little bit more dangerous than the typical John Hughes teen fare that came out in the 80s. This is the other side of those tracks. These are kids that are kind of in the wrong situation at the wrong time, and they get involved with some serious stuff that kind of, sends them down this road that they would have never expected, and it's a very dangerous, scandalous road at times. And The Legend of Billie Jean fits, all of those ingredients really, really well. The cast is really great in this one. Helen Slater really steals the show with her really magnetizing beauty. And like I said, Christian Slater is really great in this. He has a lot of great intensity, and he just feels very real. You really feel for his character. And then, one of Billie Jean's best friends is played by Yardley Smith, who, of course, would go on to star in Maximum Overdrive, and then, of course, as we all know, she would go on to voice Lisa Simpson in The Simpsons, and she's really great and funny in this. She really plays a great friend to Billie Jean's character. Eventually, on their cross to evade and, stay away from the police, of course, they encounter Keith Gordon's character, Keith Gordon from, of course, Back to School and John Carpenter's Christine. They encounter him, and he's this cool kid that's really into, like, movie makeup and movie magic, and, of course, like many other kids, in the country, he is fully aware of who Billie Jean is, and they kind of strike up this friendship with him, so strong to the point that Keith Gordon's character, thinks of this bright idea to make himself their willing hostage, so that at least Billie Jean and her camp kind of have a bit of a negotiating, token on their side if they have a hostage of some sort. So, at the bottom, barrel of this film, it's all about $608. Fair is fair just to get the proper amount of money to get the repairs done to Christian Slater's bike. And while it seems silly and ridiculous, it is a cause and, a reason that these kids are fighting for that you truly believe in as a viewer. I mean, you're sucked into it so much, and I was just like, it's only $608, why won't the guy just pay it to her? Like, it really is fair is fair, just do what's right. I mean, the bully beating him up, and then, of course, the father trying to come on, to Billie Jean, you just kind of want to see these kids succeed in securing the money for that moped. So it's a really wild journey that goes on to it. The film is done really, really well with a really great soundtrack with the likes of Billy Idol and Pat Benatar in it, so great soundtrack going for it. The Legend of Billie Jean was actually directed by Matthew Robbins, who kind of came up in the ranks young with the likes of George Lucas. He was very friendly with George Lucas, and he would go on to direct quite a few other things, such as Batteries Not Included and Bingo from '91. Does anybody remember that with the circus dog? I might be the only one, but The Legend of Billie Jean is one of his other films that, again, it evaded me for years, but I finally got to check it out now, and I'm really, really excited about it because I found so much to enjoy in this one. I really dug the story, loved the young cast, great music, and just that story. It's just a really cool teen angst story that I can really get into. It's a little bit more dangerous and a little bit darker than your typical John Hughes 80s teeny bopper fare. So that's kind of the reason that I really, really enjoyed this film a lot. By Mill Creek standards, they're not really known for throwing special features on it, but it is really cool to note that an audio commentary with Helen Slater and Yardley Smith is included in this one, and it's a really great listen. So if you enjoyed the film as much as I did, then that's something that you're definitely going to want to tune in to check out. So, like I said, if you're a fan of teen angst films, looking for something a little bit more dangerous in your 80s teenage films, then The Legend of Billie Jean is definitely something that's going to be up your alley. Great cast, great music, great story with direction by Matthew Robbins, who predominantly these days is contributing to script writing duties with Guillermo del Toro. Really cool stuff. So he's come a long way, had his hands in, quite a lot of different things in his long journey, but The Legend of Billie Jean really stands out as a very unique entry in the teen angst films of the 1980s. So be sure to definitely check it out if you're interested. It's available July 22nd from Mill Creek Entertainment. Alrighty guys, and next up available right now from Magnet Releasing is the slasher musical hybrid, Stage Fright. Now this independent production, which was lensed up in Canada, is exactly what the package art claims it to be. This is Glee meets Sleepaway Camp. And if people think that that's really unusual and really off the wall to see a blending of those two genres together, you're absolutely right, but have no fear, because Stage Fright is a unique example of a film that blends those two genres and does it really, really well. But for those of you that may not have heard about this independent effort, it deals with a starry-eyed young teenager who's hoping to follow in the footsteps of her tragically murdered Broadway diva mother. When her and her brother are taken in by their stepfather, who's played by Meatloaf of all people, they're stuck doing kitchen duty at his very snobbish performing arts drama camp for young teenagers. When the girl really wants to follow her dreams and be a Broadway star, just like her mother, she goes against the grain and tries to audition for the performance, the play that's being held at the camp, and when she lands the role, slowly but surely a mysterious stalker is roaming around the campgrounds, offing people left and right. That's the basic gist of it. I mean, very reminiscent of, 80s, slashers like Sleepaway Camp, The Burning, or Friday the 13th, but it's just injected with this ridiculous, over-the-top, musical vibe to it, and it's really funny. I mean, the cast is predominantly all, up-and-coming young talent from Canada, and they're all really great in it. I was very surprised. They were all very funny. The musical numbers are really well done. For the budget that this thing was probably operating on, and, the talent involved, they accomplished a hell of a lot, and the songs are really catchy for what it is. It's actually interesting. The makers of the film even say in, the behind-the-scenes footage that you find on the disc that this is a film that's meant for people that love musicals and people that just as equally hate musicals, and I totally get what he means by that, because while, you're going to walk away kind of bobbing your head to quite a few of the songs that you're going to hear in this one. It's a total farce and parody of, musicals and kids that are really into drama and take it, one step beyond than most people in high school. So it's very funny and humorous in that respect. It pokes fun at a lot of those, cliched people that we all knew in high school that just took, the dramas and the plays very seriously, but they present it with a slasher backdrop, which is very, very effective. I mean, the killer in this is really cool. He's got a great kabuki mask, because the Broadway play that they're putting on is called The Haunting of the Opera, and the very eccentric, funny young director who is hosting the show decided to do it in a postmodern Japanese kind of environment. So that's the cause for the killer wearing this really awesome kabuki mask, and he's very, very savage in this one. I mean, when, the killings start, they are very gory and very over-the-top, so it's a really, really interesting contrast when you see this very lighthearted, very whimsical songs and all this dancing choreography matched with, heavy metal backdrop music with, slashing and gallons of gore, but like I said, very effective and very, very cool visually. If there's any complaint that I have in Stage Fright, while I did say that they do blend the genres of horror and musicals very well, I feel like they could have done a better job at kind of, balancing them out throughout the, 80-plus minute runtime. The first 40 minutes of the film feels very much like a full, head-on musical, so you're constantly kind of questioning where does the horror angle come into this. But if you're patient enough, the final 40 minutes feels, far more like a slasher of, the Golden Age slashers that we all remember, but I think that the film would have benefited as a better viewing experience if they would have, really handled the two genres better, kind of switching off intermittently as opposed to, one half being very heavy music-orientated, whereas the latter half is just straight horror. But overall, I think that they blended the two genres really well. I think the young cast in this one is really great. Minnie Driver, who appears as the lead's mother, who's tragically killed, not giving anything away there because it's really part of the description, who's tragically killed in the opening scene, has a really nice cameo in it. I think that she adds something very nice to it, and of course she befalls a very, very brutal murder, which is very cool to see. It kicks the film off really nicely. And then of course you have Meatloaf in this one, and who doesn't love Meatloaf? I mean, the guy is, such an accomplished singer, tons of Grammys, and the few films that he has appeared in have all more or less become classics. I mean, the Rocky Horror Picture Show, Fight Club, tons of things like that. So he is really good in this one as the stepfather. You know, you're not really sure what to think of him. Is he a very caring stepfather? Is he behind the murders at the park, or at the camp, rather? You never really know until the finale, but I really liked his appearance in it. I've always liked Meatloaf in any of the films he's appeared in, and Stage Fright is no exception. The film looks really good. Obviously, it's a newly shot film, so it's going to look very fresh, clean, you know, free of scratches or dirt and debris. Colors pop very nicely in this one, especially when they're performing, you know, in their full costumes for the show that they're putting on at the camp. The only thing that was a little discerning is the black levels. There's a lot of dimly lit scenes where, you know, they're on the stage and it's very dark and the killer may be stalking them in the shadows. The black levels are a little crushed at times. I mean, everything is still perfectly visible. It's just not as inky and clear as, you know, black levels seen in, you know, other recent films of this ilk. But, you know, minor complaint aside, it looks and sounds really good. The music comes across very, you know, blasting. You know, anytime that the killer comes across on screen, there's always some really, really heavy electric guitar music going on that's really going to send your speakers for quite a loop. All that said, there's actually a really nice beefy assortment of special features in this one. You get a making of Stage Fright featurette, you get deleted scenes, and In Memory of a Fallen Camper featurette, which is pretty funny. It deals with, kind of shines a spotlight on this actress that had quite a few scenes cut out, but she was supposed to be a character that was really, really overly obsessed with Liza Minnelli to the point where she was, you know, mimicking her and trying to be her. So really funny outtakes there. You get a Stage Fright sing-along. You get an interview with writer-director, co-composer Jerome Sable, who currently is actually shooting one of the new segments for ABC's of Death 2, and co-composer Ellie Battalion. You get an evolution of the set design, an Axe TV, a look at Stage Fright, and then you get a commentary with the director and the co-composer too. So tons of special features to cut into if you enjoyed Stage Fright as much as I did. Overall, guys, Stage Fright is a very unusual, very eccentric blending of the musical and slasher film genres, but it works really well. I was very impressed with the young talent. Very cool to see Minnie Driver and Meatloaf in a, you know, really new age slasher that really pulled it off, but injected something very new to the formula that could seem very tired to a lot of people today. But overall, had a blast with Stage Fright, and I would highly recommend it. So if you're interested, guys, it's available right now from Magnet Releasing. Alrighty, guys, and next up, available right now from Magnolia Home Entertainment, is director Lars von Trier's latest epic opus, Nymphomaniac Volume I and Volume II. Now, admittedly, I've never actually seen any of Lars von Trier's previous efforts. I know they've always had the stigma of being very gloom and doom, and he tries to really inject a very somber and depressing tone into the stories he's trying to convey. But in the case of Nymphomaniac Volume I and Volume II, it was really hard to not hear about this project. Back when Lars von Trier was indicating that this was going to be his next film, it was very easy for him to attract a very diverse and eclectic group of cast members to join up with him on it. In addition, the added buzz of the professional cast members in the film, that they were going to be engaging in actual simulated sex scenes, which of course turned out to be false, just added to the growing mystique and allure surrounding this Nymphomaniac project. This is actually the conclusion to Lars von Trier's Trilogy of Depression series, which of course kicked off in 2009 with Antichrist, followed by Melancholia. But for those of you that haven't heard of Nymphomaniac, Nymphomaniac Volume I centers on a girl named Jo, who is a self-diagnosed nymphomaniac. She's found brutally beaten and nearly unconscious in an alley where an elderly gentleman who's a bachelor, played by Stellan Skarsgård, finds her and brings her back to his apartment to kind of heal her wounds. It is at that moment where Jo decides to tell him the erotic story of, you know, her early adolescence and early adulthood, you know, kind of turning into the nymphomaniac that she is. That's the basic plot gist of this one. This project, like I said earlier, really gathered a very diverse and eclectic group of cast members. You have Charlotte Gainsbourg, who plays the adult version of Jo, of course the one that's kind of recounting the story to Stellan Skarsgård's character, but the film constantly is going back and forth in flashbacks and back to the present day with the conversation. In those flashbacks, a very attractive up-and-coming actress, Stacey Martin, actually plays Jo, and she's terrific in this one. She's very mesmerizing. In every scene that she's in, she really just kind of sells the character of Jo, and she really gives it the, the emotional ground that you need to really get attracted to this story. And she just does a really phenomenal job. She's a real scene stealer in this one. In addition, Shia LaBeouf makes an appearance in this one, and I know he's kind of gone the route of doing more indie productions, but before films of this ilk, he was more known for, his blockbuster fare in the Transformers series and Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but Shia LaBeouf plays her first lover, Jerome, and it's after her first encounter, losing her virginity to him, that she kind of develops this fixation on him, although she's, obviously goes out and continues experimenting with many, many more men, but it's just this growing fixation with Shia LaBeouf's character that kind of eventually turns into a lasting relationship. Shia's really good in this one, too, and Shia, as well as many of the other cast members, including the highly underrated Christian Slater and Uma Thurman, they all really lose themselves in these characters. You really forget that you're watching Shia LaBeouf or Christian Slater, for that matter. They really just kind of get into their characters, and as the viewer, you believe them too, which is that's the most important thing you could possibly ask for when you're watching any type of movie, is to escape into the performances that are being shown to you. And everybody really hits their marks very well in it. I was very surprised with how everybody handled their particular characters. Again, Christian Slater actually plays Joe's dad in earlier flashback sequences, and he's really great. I think that he, again, gives a really good emotional comfort to the story, and you really get an idea and, really start to develop a real emotional connection to Joe's character and understand what she cares about other than, her fixation for this sexual stimulation that she just is constantly chasing day in and day out. It's a really fascinating, epic character study. It's just told on a very grand scale. I know that Nymphomaniac, going into it, was kind of getting, the stigma of being a very pornographic film, or at least that's what people were fearing. On the contrary, this film is not pornographic in the slightest. The sexual scenes that are found in this one are not for shock value or, used in an exploitative nature. It's definitely there to serve the story and tell this very unique tale of this self-diagnosed nymphomaniac, and they're all done very tastefully, and they're only used to really push the story forward. Done very, very well. Like I said, the sexual scenes, while many people did think that the professional cast were actually engaging in the sexual acts, they were not. They actually had used porn, adult entertainment stars and as body doubles, and just imposed the professional cast onto those, during those sequences. So, very interesting. Watching the film, you're going to absolutely think you're seeing, actors that you've seen time and time again in actual sexual scenes, but you're not. Overall, I had an incredible time watching Nymphomaniac Volume I. I know people that are far more versed in Lars von Trier's catalog than myself were left kind of underwhelmed with Nymphomaniac, and were kind of urging me not to kind of watch Nymphomaniac and base Lars von Trier on that alone. But on the contrary, for this being my first kind of experimentation with Lars von Trier's work, I was incredibly impressed with it. I think that it was a really well-written story. I think that he commanded, the camera incredibly well, and he just got stellar performances out of all the cast members in it. Another person that I did want to talk about who's seen in the film very briefly is Uma Thurman. She actually plays the wife of one of the many men that Joe's character is sleeping with, and she's only in a scene, one brief scene, but it is an absolutely powerful and effective scene, and she completely steals the show, and it's just very, very chilling, and very, just an incredible turn for Uma Thurman in this one. Of course, the second film, Nymphomaniac Volume II, picks right up where Volume I left off, and it has Jo continuing to tell her story to Stellan Skarsgård's character about of course, her, continuing descent into her nymphomania well into her adulthood, and the deeper she gets into it, the darker the film really becomes. Certainly, in tone, Volume 2 is far more darker than Volume 1. I feel like there's a bit of an innocence to Volume 1, because we're really along for the journey and understanding, at a very young age, almost as a little child up until, she's an adolescent, into her 20s, about Joe. So it's a very innocent story at times, but in Volume 2, it's darker because you really get to understand the sickness, if that's what you want to call it, that Joe is experiencing, because she's well into adulthood here, so she's, obviously accountable for her actions, and the chase for the sexual stimulation that she seeks just tends to get far more dangerous and just that much darker with, each sexual encounter that she's trying to chase down. So very, very chilling stuff in this one. You have Jamie Bell making an appearance in this one, and arguably one of the creepiest performances out of the two volumes. He plays a character that women go to get physically and violently abused for pleasure, and he's a very chilling character. The sequences between him and Charlotte Gainsbourg are very, very chilling, and will definitely have you on the edge of your seat, biting your nail. So very chilling, very effective stuff in this one. You also have Udo Kier making a very, very brief appearance. It's more like a cameo. He pops up as a bartender with literally 2 lines. I was a little disappointed in that because I love him in, his other work, so it was a shame to not see him better used, but it was nice to kind of have him in the scene that he appeared in. Shia LaBeouf does return to his role of Jerome, and he's great in this again. Willem Dafoe, who Lars von Trier, of course, worked with in Antichrist, makes an appearance in this one, too. A brief one, but still very effective and very chilling as well. I would say that I still favored Volume 1 more so than Volume 2, and it doesn't have much to do with the fact that Volume 2 is far more darker in tone. It's just that there's certain characters that appear in Volume 2 that I don't want to get into at the sake of spoiling anything, but there are some new characters that appear in this one, and as their relationship with Joe deepens and matures, their motivations for some of the things that they do just never really felt clear to me or very justified, and that's kind of where I kind of was losing a little bit of focus with the movie, with some of the choices that these characters made. I mean, it definitely adds to the dark, brooding nature that Lars von Trier is trying to sell in a film series like this one, but I still just had trouble trying to wrap my head around it. That said, Nymphomaniac Volume 2 ends on an incredibly shocking and chilling finale that, again, I dare not spoil here, but having watched it, days ago, I'm still racking my brain around it. It was a very, very impactful and, very chilling sequence that I just can't get out of my head, and based on everything else that you're going to see in this film in regards to, sequences of a sexual nature and whatnot, that finale was easily the darkest part of the movie, and that chilled me more than anything else that I had seen in this nearly 4-hour epic character study. The film does look very good on the 2 Blu-rays. It's not very colorful by any means, but then again, I think it was an artistically sound choice that Lars von Trier was making. It's very, very colorless. It's got a very somber and very restrained look, which is definitely accurately relayed on the Blu-ray. Colors look good, skin tones are very accurate, but it's a very somber and restrained color scheme, so it looks good. It's just not going to be popping or bursting with color, but that certainly was the artistic intent. Sounds very good too. Not much in the way of music. It's definitely a very heavy dialogue-driven film, so dialogue comes across very clearly and sharp, so you're not going to miss anything in the audio mix whatsoever. You do get quite an abundance of special features on the Volume 1 Blu-ray. You get a characters featurette where various cast members talk about their roles in the film and how they were attracted to it and how it came their way. You also get an Axe TV, a look at Nymphomaniac featurette, as well as a Volume 1 trailer. And then on Disc 2, where Nymphomaniac Volume 2 is housed, you get the director featurette where various cast members like Shia LaBeouf and Stellan Skarsgård talk about Lars von Trier and his methods and how he works. In addition, you have the sex featurette where, again, the principal talent talk about the usage of the sexual scenes in it. They kind of explore what I mentioned earlier about the adult entertainment doubles doing penetration sequences, and then you know, the professional cast were imposed on them. They get into all of that, and then rounding that off, you get a trailer for Volume 2. So not an incredibly in-depth spread of special features. I would have loved to have Lars von Trier talking on it, or even an audio commentary, because that would just be fantastic. But a little light in the features, but the film itself is really remarkable. For my first outing with anything Lars von Trier related, I was really blown over by Nymphomaniac Volume I and Volume II. It's definitely not a film that's going to be for everybody, but I think that's kind of a known fact, you know, considering Lars von Trier's previous efforts. But like I said, for my first outing with him, I was really caught up in the story. He got great performances out of this incredibly diverse and talented cast, so I could not have been more pleased with my first experience with von Trier's latest effort. Again, I think I did favor Volume 1 slightly more than Volume 2, but that ending in Volume 2 will definitely leave you shaking in your shoes for quite a few days after you check this one out. But if this is up your alley, be sure to check it out now. It's available courtesy of Magnolia Home Entertainment. Alrighty guys, and the final title that we're going to discuss in this week's installment of the Blu-ray DVD Weekly Wrap-Up is available right now from Full Moon Features. It's 1979's Tourist Trap. Executive produced by Charles Band, this film marks the directorial debut of David Schmaler, who would re-team with Band throughout the years on one of my personal favorites, 1986's Crawl Space starring Klaus Kinski, and of course the original Puppet Master, a franchise that Band is still churning sequels and spin-offs out of. For those of you that have never seen Tourist Trap, it follows a similar plot line to the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, centering on a group of unsuspecting teenagers, one of whom played by Tanya Roberts, who would go on to appear in such thing as the original Charlie's Angels series, and of course Don Coscarelli's Beastmaster. But it deals with a group of unsuspecting teenagers who are far outside of their comfort zone and get stranded near an abandoned wax museum that's ran by this very elderly and reclusive owner who's played by the great Chuck Connors. The longer that the group stay there, of course, a mysterious killer is amongst them, offing the teenagers left and right. This is a film that I've always appreciated throughout the years on like an imagery level. There's a lot of cool images presented in this and some very cool ideas. For as many cool things that are found in this one, there are definite problems within it. There's definitely some pacing issues that go along with this. This is not, by any stretch of the imagination, a perfect horror movie or a perfect slasher film. It pales, pretty far when you compare it to such things as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but being released in the wake of Tobe Hooper's original classic, you can definitely see where they were inspired. I really compare Tourist Trap to being the cheap man's version of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre meets House of Wax. That's really the best way to describe it, but then there's also a supernatural layer, a supernatural current that's imposed in a film like this, and that's one of the things that I actually appreciate about the film. It's definitely a film, like I said, that follows the tropes of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, pitting, these unsuspecting teenagers in, an area that's far outside of their comfort zone. They're stranded due to a flat tire and just kind of seek, salvation or, comfort at this, abandoned wax museum that Chuck Connors hosts. Chuck Connors is phenomenal in this film. He's actually one of the best things about it. He's another actor, a genre actor that's, starred in so many great ones. One of my favorite cult movies being The Police Connection. He's great in that. He's really good in Tourist Trap. I mean, if there's any huge reason to make watching Tourist Trap a necessity, it's to see Chuck Connors' performance, because he's very eccentric, very kooky. He's got this very, commanding, drawing stare in his eyes that's very creepy. Again, it's a film that is rooted with issues. It's got pacing problems where, the group of teenagers are really found meandering throughout the runtime. This killer who, again, parallel it to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the killer visually looks very cool, but you can definitely see where they're borrowing from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The killer is wearing these wax masks that kind of look like they've been ripped straight off of a wax mannequin. So he definitely has this physical appearance of something akin to Leatherface, but, it's still visually cool. I really enjoy the look of it, but again, the teenagers just find themselves meandering throughout the runtime. The killer might capture them, and then they get away, and then the killer once again captures them, but then they get away. So it's really this cat and mouse thing that gets tired relatively quickly, and you just kind of want to see a little bit more bloodshed in it than there really is. That's another thing. This is, again, comparing it to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The one thing that Tourist Trap definitely lacks in is its fair share of blood. There's a handful of kills in this one, but they're never very gory or very bloody, to say the least. So that's an area that Tourist Trap definitely fails in, if that's what you're hoping to find in this one. Again, there's this really cool supernatural theme that goes on in it, where literally the killer can just stare at objects like a window or a rocking chair or virtually anything and make them move by, I guess, the power of his mind. I mean, you're not really too sure how it works. It's just this supernatural power that he possesses, and they don't really explore that enough. I think that would have been really cool to handle it on a, to present the supernatural element at more of the forefront as opposed to like an afterthought, because it's definitely cool, but you're kind of like, well, that seems a little out of place because we don't really understand why he has that, or, it just feels slightly out of place in a film that's really trying to present itself like a head-on slasher in the wake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The film actually looks pretty good. It's a marginal upgrade over the DVD. This is definitely not reference quality for your Blu-ray player, but it's definitely a marginal upgrade. Skin tones do look pretty good. The few colors that are found in it, predominantly in the clothing found in the principal town, does pop reasonably well. It's, for the most part, it's actually pretty blemish-free. There are some minor instances of flakes and speckles that pop up through the transfer, but considering the age, that's bound to happen. But overall, it does look pretty good. Black levels are something that absolutely could have helped in this one. Again, this was a low-budget affair, and it was definitely shot probably, with not a lot of lights, so there's a lot of dimly lit scenes at night that makes it really hard to see what's going on in each of the scenes at times, but again, I think that has a lot more to do with just the way that they filmed it, but yeah, I mean, it's very hard to see some of the things that are going on it. This Blu-ray in particular has been plagued with some controversy. Unsuspectingly, this was actually issued with 5 minutes of footage missing from it. So it's definitely a bummer, considering the original DVD did have, the version that we've all come to know, whereas this Blu-ray release is now cut by 5 minutes. And I think, whatever you want to say, it just kind of chalks up to really careless quality control. I mean, there's not like there wasn't, just so many different versions of Tourist Trap to reference that they couldn't, that they just didn't have the time or the resources to look back and just do kind of a compare and contrast. I mean, there really was just that one DVD for the most part that we've been holding on to for many, many years now, and that had the 5 minutes. So for them to not have it on here, whatever the reasons may be, it's still a bummer to say the least. There are some cool special features, newly made special features, including an audio commentary by director David Schmaler and a behind-the-scenes making-of featurette hosted by David Schmaler. It's like a 25-minute featurette that's very, very informative. It's very well done. So for that and the new commentary alone, it might be worth the price of this Blu-ray if you can get it for a good deal. In addition, you do have rare trailers and some full moon trailers to round out the special features package. So while the video and audio transfer in this is a marginal upgrade, it's a little bit, but it's definitely a slight noticeable improvement over the DVD. There's some great special features involved, but you may want to hang on to your DVD since there is 5 minutes of footage mileage, missing from this one. Overall, I do enjoy Tourist Trap for a variety of reasons. It's definitely got its fair share of issues, but I would definitely say that it's something that slasher fans and, fans in general of horror cinema from the late 70s and early 80s will definitely want to check out. So if you're interested in checking out this slasher flick in the wake of Tobe Hooper's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's available right now from Full Moon Features. And that about does it for this week's installment of the Blu-ray DVD Weekly Wrap-Up. As always, guys, thanks again for tuning in, but be sure to stay tuned to the website for advanced reviews of the soccer documentary Next Goal Wins, Scream Factory's upcoming release for Leviathan, Nicolas Cage in Rage, co-starring Danny Glover, and Varsity Blood from Image Entertainment. All this and more, and plus I have a very, very special announcement. In conjunction with Dr. Macabre's laboratory, myself and Pete Macabre are going to be hosting a brand new horror-themed web series entitled Real Horror with Mike and Pete. We're going to shoot our first episode tomorrow, July 26th, and that should be live by Sunday, July 27th. It's just going to be a new web series where two horror fans can get together and discuss the current state of horror, upcoming Blu-ray and DVD reviews, how our feelings on underrated and overrated flicks. It's going to be a great opportunity for horror fans to tune in and just see two guys rap about it. In addition, we're also going to be hosting a series of video commentary so you guys at home can follow along with your own personal Blu-ray or DVD copy and listen to our episodes as we, joke about them and inject informative insight into them. So be sure to like the Facebook page and follow my website, mikespopculture.com, and head over to drmacabre.com to stay up to date with everything that we're doing with Real Horror with Mike and Pete. Once again, guys, thanks again for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time.
Happy, happy Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. Happy, happy Halloween, silver shamrock.